After the recent tournament of Dead or Alive tournament, Kasumi had ended up winning the entire tournament. She was in fact proud of that, and when she came home, her entire family was expected that, and they also already knew that she had won the tournament, and they celebrated with a party which lasted the whole night. They were all proud of her, especially her older brother Hayate, who was really proud of her sister. Even though during after that late night, after the party was over only a few hours ago, Kasumi was standing by her room, looking at the night sky. She was actually thinking about something that had recently got her thinking. During the battle or in the tournament, she encountered one of the other fighters by the name Leifang. Leifang was in fact one of the others also who came second in a place of the tournament. Despite though that Leifang was quite a decent skilled fighter like herself, she felt proud that Leifang actually gave a very good sparring match and even a great tournament. They both agreed to keep in touch after the tournament was over. Despite though, there was one thing that Kasumi didn't expect to happen. Because during after the tournament was over, when they all had to get the prize, Kasumi looked at Li Fang, and for the very first time, she realized and even noticed how beautiful she was. Not only because her glowing beauty, there was something else. Not because that she was a skilled fighter like herself, but she was amazed of her beauty. Even though despite they were just close friends or at least some sort of part-time rivals or something like that. But Kasumi though, despite that after the tournament was over, she just wanted to reach out to Lei Fang. Maybe they could maybe do some sparring together, maybe sometime after the tournament was over. She even mentioned this though during after the match to just shortly after that she had received the prize. And Li Fang actually said that might be a good idea, but not for a while though, because she had to take care of some things at home. But Kasumi actually gave her her address and her so that they could write to each other from time to time to see just to keep in touch, which they happened. And sometimes after the tournament was over, after that Kasumi had won again the tournament itself, she went back to normal. But in fact, she started sparring against some of her clan members just because to maintain her physical physical strength and uh, her at least to be in top shape. But there were some times when she doesn't even after that she had sparred or she didn't want to be sparring with anyone. She just walked around either at her home or around in the town. Despite this, she wanted to be with someone like Lei Feng. Lei Feng, though, in herself, she actually admired Kasumi because of the was such skilled fighter. She was able to give Lei Feng such good fight, but also very good challenge. Because most of the time, the most challenge that Lei Feng had been a challenge against wasn't such a great opponent. But Kasumi was the most experienced opponent she had, and she at least that Kasumi was experienced. Not only because that she was a fighter, she actually admired her of all other things. She in fact had even gave Li Fang some ideas and some advice what to do, and even some training techniques for some of her own skills that she had learned, and she didn't mind to teach her that. Despite that, though, Li Fang did in fact admire her so much. And since they both were kept in touch, they were actually getting more closer than that anyone believed. Even though Kasumi herself, she wasn't even sure, because she had realized that she had feelings for Leifang. But there was one other thing. She wasn't even sure if her family would have accepted that her daughter was either bisexual or lesbian, because this was something that she never actually brought up a topic asking her parents about. Because if they were against that type of relationship of same gender, she was afraid that they will make her an outcast and remove her title part of it, and even make sure that she will never be allowed to be taken part of the tournament ever again. Part of that tore her apart. She wanted to be with someone like Leifang, but at the same time, she wanted to keep up her family's traditions, even try to maintain her relationship with the family, but even the part of herself is scared how family will react. But one evening, when she talked to her parents, what if that, what if they had someone, a friend, who was in fact was in the same gender of the same as herself? How would they react if they had a friend who had a daughter was in the same gender, like in dating? Both their parents were surprised to even on such question, but they said even they don't have a friend or any friends who have been in that position, but she was just curious to know how that family would react. Would they outcast her dear daughter, or accept that and support her? Even though the parents was a little bit surprised at this question, but they said they would probably support her. After all, in this modern time, a lot of families had tried to maintain even some of them old traditional lifestyles, and some were maybe it's against the same gender relationship. But then she asked her parents if they, if for example, if they were supported that type of relationship. Both her parents were silent for only a brief moment before they both said they would actually support it, but they never thought about it as they never actually been asked that. So they asked the daughter if she was in the same gender, even though that Kasumi tried to make excuses that she wasn't. She was just curious. She just had heard some stories about some other people had been encountered some of that kind of relationship, and they actually bought the excuse. So at least she knows that her parents would support her. But she wouldn't not be just saying to her family that she had found a girlfriend, but before not having been able to find one. But there was a lot of things that she wanted to do though, because shortly a few days later, Kasumi received a letter from Leifang, who is telling her that she is coming to her part of town so they can do some sparring match against each other, as they both had promised. And though Kasumi was excited and a bit nervous how things would react, but as a few days later, Lei Fang actually appeared at Kasumi's home. Kasumi's parents was actually very impressed to see that her one of the other finalists actually appeared at their home. They welcomed her home, honored her, as they had been mentioned that she is a very skilled fighter, and they even saw that some of the trained fights on the broadcast. After the boat, Li Fang and Kasumi left their home to went in the part of the woods that nearby to have some sparring against each other more privately. Even though on the way, Kasumi couldn't stop looking at Li Fang from time to time and felt her heart was getting beating faster, even like rising faster. She had no idea what to do, but she tried to keep calm, to keep her mask of deception, or at least as to mask herself and pretend that nothing ever was wrong. And when they came to the forest, or to the woods, they started to do their sparring matches, and they sparred for maybe an hour apart before they take a break and continue for another hour. And after that, we sparred for maybe for about 3 hours. they decided there was maybe time to take a break and go back to eat something. After all, it was only about 3 p.m. when they decided to go back. But even though Kasumi wanted to ask Leifang something, but she couldn't even bring herself to bring the right words to do it. But who knows? Maybe she will be able to do that one day. But for now, she felt maybe that she wouldn't be able to. But during on the walk, even through the forest, when Kasumi just suddenly took the courage to ask her if the Fang was ever thought about if she had found any someone to be with, like if there's any boy back home she likes, or if there's any girl she likes. Le Fang it wasn't even actually surprised at that kind of question. She did mention that she wasn't even looking for someone like now, or no one hasn't even been showing any sort of interest in her. When she did ask saying that, Kasumi felt maybe it wasn't the right moment to be telling her, or maybe she didn't want to tell her all. But after that, only felt for like an eternity, but they only felt for like was only a few seconds when this conflict inside her, in her mind, saying like was a two part of herself. Tell her. You should tell her. But the other part says, wait, don't tell her. Wait, don't tell her. There was like a fight between those two parts of the mind that's conflict. But she realized maybe it was point to tell her at least how she felt for Li Fang, despite knowing that she may not even be into her in the same way. And after Kasumi did mention this, Li Fang just stopped, and Kasumi continued to walk for only a few more steps, but realized that Li Fang had just stopped and turned around and looked at her. Li Fang actually did ask her if she meant it, or it was just some part of joke, because she doesn't even like to be a joke in that way. And Kasumi said it was the truth. She didn't lie to her. And of course, Kasumi walked up to her and said, ever since the tournament, she had fallen in love with her, or at least have strong feelings for her. But it wasn't until only a few days after the tournament was over when she realized she had fallen in love with her. But it was something about her that when she didn't know though. She had even asked her family if they would have accepted if she would have been dating a girl of the same gender. And even though La Fang was actually very curious to know what her family would react, and Kasumi said that her family would support her. But even though despite this, she had never been dating the same gender before, or even had considered be dating. But when Kasumi did mention this, she then asked if Leifang probably won't go out with her, maybe see if it could work. Even despite that, it felt like eternity. Leifang stood there silently, but after she thought for only a few seconds, even felt like an eternity. She said yes. She was willing to give them a chance to see if it could work. So, but the next day, they decided, even though Kasumi had let Leifang stay over the night at their home, and even the next day, they decided to go out on their first date. They went to this cafe nearby their home, which they had something to eat and walked around in town, walking some different parts to see some stores and shops and just having a good time. It didn't even take long for a family to realize what's going on. But they were actually quite so supportive though. After that, they figured out that Kasumi had been dating Le Feng. They weren't even really surprised though, because they realized after that the question the daughter asked them only a few sometime earlier, they were actually supportive, even though the Kasumi was just happy to hear that. Even La Feng's family, they were also supportive. They were just a bit surprised at first that their daughter had in fact been dating a girl, but especially the winner of the Dead or Alive tournament. They didn't expect that part, but after they realized The daughter was quite happy to be with someone like Kasumi. And even Kasumi was actually very introduced to Leifang's family only by being dating for about a couple of months. They were actually supportive, they actually liked her. And even though Kasumi was a little bit nervous how Leifang's family would react, but they were actually happy though. And after that, Leifang and Kasumi had been dating for about 3 years. There was something about this time when Kasumi had planned something special for Leifang. Kasumi took Leifang to the park nearby her home, where they used small talk to friends before when she actually proposed to Leifang. And Leifang could not be more happy because she started crying. And she said yes immediately. Not only because of that she were now spending more time with her fiance, with Kasumi. When even both families were told, they were really surprised but supportive. They decided to have a traditional wedding within the next few months. And 2 months later, they actually got married. They decided to went have a small ceremony and even small party afterwards. It was a great time from both. Despite after all of this, they decided it was time to be doing this because they have wanted to be married. At least Kasumi wanted to have been asking Asu Li Feng for some quite some time now. She was just a bit nervous how if she felt if she was ready enough. But now she was ready and had done it. They even celebrated a small honeymoon in a small place outside town for a couple of days. And after they had been married for about 2 years, they felt ready to start a family. So both Lei Fang and Kasumi actually adopted two daughters from a local orphanage, and they loved it. Their daughters were even at the beginning they were quite shy around their two mothers, but after some time they opened up and started to love with mothers no matter what. And this is how Li Feng and Kasumi found a true love, got a family together. The end.